Okay, I got the red smoke.
Gun runs north to south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Come on with it, baby. Give it to me. I need it. Get cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
So this is my first podcast. Any do's or don'ts or
Ever?
no? I mean, in general.
Here's what I say with every guest. I'll be responsible for what I say.
Okay,
You are responsible for what you say.
I got it.
Where do we even start? We have to tell the history of who you are first and then how you kind of got to where we are right now. So,
Okay.
So break it down for me. Give me the, well, not even the Reader's Digest. Give me whatever version you want to of who Preston McCormick is.
So again, Preston McCormick grew up in Banning, California. It's down near Palm Springs area. People are familiar with that area. Went to high school there. Was recruited for football at West Point. So ended up going to West Point. I didn't quite have high enough SAT scores, so I had to go to prep school for a year, where I got my scores up, and then went to the academy. Ended up not making the football team, but joined the judo team, where I ended up being captain of the judo team, getting my black belt. And a lot of people don't know this, but the West Point judo team is probably the winningest sports team at all of West Point.
I wasn't even aware they had a judo team, if I'm
Yes.
being honest.
Well, when I was there, San Jose State and Fresno State were the two universities that recruited judokas.
I believe San Jose is still very steeped
yeah.
in judo culture.
Yes, they give scholarships for judo at both of those universities.
It is
So,
one of the most savage and martial of the arts.
Yes, they're like I said, probably the smartest thing I did while I was there is not play football.
What was your favorite throw?
I was an Ippon Serenagi guy, so traditionalist.
Michael's a judoka. He's over there. I don't even know
Yes.
what the fuck you might have just ordered a noodle dish for all I know.
It's the first throw you learn when you do judo.
Okay.
So it's just a basic over-the-shoulder throw.
I think
Basic.
Michael might try that with me. It's not
Yes.
successful. I mean, obviously, I don't need to say that, but
But I won most of my matches with something we call the gamba, which is a rolling pin, where you grab the gi and then you do a roll and you pin them down.
okay.
So they
Is
call
that
it.
your move too, Michael? All right.
So once I finished there, I graduated, was a second lieutenant. I won't say where I was at in my class, but it was down towards the bottom. I was reaching up. And actually started out in Patriot Missile System. So I went to the Gulf War, did 3 tours in the Gulf War, and on my second tour back, a lot of senators, congressmen, they wanted to see Patriot Missile. So we went out there, and my commander, this guy, Marv Walworth, another West Pointer, was kind of taking credit for what my guys did. They did these really cool trifolds, and back then you didn't have PowerPoint and all this stuff now, so it must have taken him days to do this, and he was kind of taking credit for it. Him and I got in this big knockdown drag out. He's like, you're fired. And so they stuck me in the S3 shop, doing
Operations.
And it was kind of a pretty low point in my life. I was drinking and just, it wasn't a good time because you get fired as a first lieutenant, you have no future. But probably about 2-3 weeks later, these 2 special forces sergeants came into the office and they said, hey, sir, we heard what happened between you and your commander, and we think you're exactly the kind of guy we need in special forces, and we'll train you and get you ready. So they did. I went to assessment selection, which is 3 weeks, graduated or got selected. I don't know how a lot of assessments work, but ours was kind of cool until where you get down to the last number of people, and they brought you into this room, and they turned out the lights, and you could hear this helicopter in the background, thump, 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 and you heard it land, and then boom, the doors slam open, and the general goes, gentlemen, welcome to Special Forces, and they do all the little things and stuff. And
That's kind of awesome. I didn't have that experience.
yeah, I have some friends that were Navy nukes and different stuff, and when you get to a different level, they don't say anything, right? So it was kind of cool that you're like, welcome to Special. Made you feel a little special. And then from there, it's 2 years of training.
Q course, essentially?
Yeah, so I was on the officer pass, so I had to go to infantry advanced course.
I was going to ask you about that. So the SEAL pipeline is actually unique in the military, not like standalone, but more unique in that the pipeline is identical. Right. Shoulder to shoulder, every evolution together. And I obviously have a bunch of enlisted buddies who were Green Berets. How divergent is the officer portion of the Q course? What percentage would you say that you guys are shoulder to shoulder versus you're off getting a different type of training?
Really, only the last couple months of the course do they bring us together.
Really?
Yep, that part, and then also high-risk SEER. When you do the high-risk SEER course, they bring you together as well. But the high-risk SEER it's all special ops. You got Rangers, we had SEALs there, all kinds of guys. But for the most part, for the officers, we go to infantry advanced course. That's 6 months. Language school, 6 months. Then we have our own training course, which is really just planning and stuff like that. Then they bring us together to do small unit tactics and some big training events, and then you get assigned to your unit.
How is that received from the perspective of, not that this would ever happen, the enlisted personnel griping that they went through a different selection, that the process was different? I could see that sowing a little bit of animosity.
Well, the selection is the same. But, unlike SEALs, we have specialty courses, right?
Yeah.
So, you
Delta,
have
a
weapons guy, you have an engineer, you have the Delta course, which is obviously the most difficult course.
Yeah.
And that's what actually some Deltas that were being recycled were actually in my Patriot unit. And they're the ones who had talked to these special forces guys to come down and speak with me, because they game the system. They went to Patriot and they got a $20,000 bonus, hung out for 8 months, 9 months, and then went back to training.
Smart men.
Yes. So
all in all was okay though. No animosity.
There's no animosity. Good. Because everybody has their own specialty, and so they know it has to be a different course.
Okay.
And they kind of they expect the officers to be a little less trained, on their specialty areas.
Okay.
But for the most part, as an officer, your second specialty is communications, because that's your, primary job. When I was in, now they have all kinds of communications. But when I was in Africa, and we were mostly working with the African Special Forces, I only had to make comms once a week, because the satellite coverage that you had was, I had this 1 hour window to make comms, and if I missed it, we had to send Morse code. So it's not like it is today. They have all kinds of satellite comms, and
there's satellite radios that are just slightly larger than your drink of coffee.
Yes. Yeah. So back then it was completely different, and my second MOS was mostly communications. They expected me to be trained in that area, and in planning, and
Where'd the rest of your Army career take you?
So once I finished with Special Operations, or 5th Group, I commanded a team in 5th Special Forces Group for 2 years, and then after that I departed the Army. And if I could do it over again, I probably wouldn't have, but it involved a woman. And anyway, so ended up getting married and went to work for a company called Lucas Group. And Lucas Group places military personnel into civilian jobs.
Okay.
So I worked with them for about 3 years. I started my own plumbing company. I got an engineering license in California and started my own plumbing company. And then after the housing crash, our business tanked because we were working for schools. So I started doing recruiting for, I guess it would be the civilian version of special mission units, like Presidential Airways and Triple Canopy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They would give me the profiles, and I would go out and recruit the people they needed for those operations that they were setting up.
Essentially government contractors.
Yes. And then, my last, in 2012 was my last recruiting gig. I was working for the Ministry of Defense over in the UAE, and I probably brought over close to 400 U.S. personnel for a couple programs. One program was they now mirror the way the Israelis do universal service. So they have that program, because what they found with the Israelis is that when the kids are in high school, they're actually competing for the best units to try and get there. So they're already at a young age trying to make themselves better so they can get into these different units that they have.
How do you think mandatory service would either help or hurt here in the U.S.? I have my own thoughts on this.
I mean, obviously, I think there'd be protests.
But do you think we'd be better as a culture for it? And I don't necessarily mean military. When I think of mandatory service, I'm thinking Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, military, of course, in there as well, too. I'm just talking service of something outside of yourself for 2 years, and optimally not where you live.
Well, I think if you look at a lot of the elite units, CIA, these kind of people, they look for people that maybe sign up for the Peace Corps, or Mormons that have done these missions and things that have kind of make them unique and set aside. So I think if you started maybe at the state level, like here at Montana, and you had a program like that, you can get the metrics, and I feel it would be successful. No doubt about it. But if you try to roll it all out at once, because I don't know if you've been to the movies and you've seen the George Foreman movie. Have you seen that one?
If I'm being totally honest, I didn't know there was a current movie about George Foreman.
It's maybe 6 months old.
Okay,
but it's awesome because
is it about the grill he made?
No. Okay. Well, it does cover that. It does cover that. But he started,
because that's what I know more about George Foreman.
Yes, he started out in the Job Corps. And what happened is, while he was in the Job Corps, he got exposed to boxing. And within 1 year, he was in the Olympics because of this.
What?
Yes. Because of this program that they had with the Job Corps. And a lot of the people that he was in the Job Corps with were successful, which is very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's a form of service, and it really set him up for success in life, especially in the boxing arena.
I just feel like in an era where people can access almost anywhere on earth through their phone, but not actually go there.
Yes.
And almost everything can be delivered. You know what I mean? It's the opposite of the instant gratification model.
Yes.
Take 2 years. I mean, Singapore does it. They do. I mean, we're obviously talking about a country that's the size of maybe a portion of California from a population perspective. I just think that there are potentially huge benefits to people serving something outside of themselves. I think it just reframes the lens, or polishes the lens that you view the world through.
Yes. Well, if you look at the Israelis model, I mean, it's been tremendously successful. All their startups, everyone there that is in like their high-tech startup came from these elite units in the military for the eavesdropping and Pegasus and all these different programs that they have. And even an Arab country recognized the success because they have such a small population, right? In the UAE, the Emiratis only make up 10% of the population. 90% is expats. So they're looking for some way to distinguish themselves from other countries. And for them, it's pretty easy because, they're right next to Saudi Arabia and other countries like that. But
when you're doing that recruiting, do they give you? I'm just fascinated about it. I'm assuming you get a salary, but do they give you a headhunting bonus as well too per person?
So it works out. So when I was in the UAE, right, there was a guy named Andy Milani. He's former Task Force 160 commander. He was over there, and I was working up in Silicon Valley on a startup, and he called me. He's like, "Hey, Press, I need like 100 guys in 2 months. Can you help me?"
Maybe.
I'm like, maybe. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, when do you need me to be there? He's like, can you leave tonight? I'm like,
how big's the check?
So we talked about that, so I was going to get a consulting fee and a placement fee is what they call it. So I went over there 2 days later, and the issue that they had over their hiring is they had 4 generals that had to interview everybody. And so the head general was a 3-star General Turner. And I went in there, they're like, well, you're going to fill out this spreadsheet. And it was literally as long as your back wall here. And I'm like, sir, I can't do that. I go, I'll be spending the whole day just filling out paperwork. And he goes, you're going to do it? I'm like, no, I'm not. And he's like, well, we're going to go talk to Talal. So we went in and we talked to the Arab guy in charge, Talal. And, I'm like, Talal, we need to do this and this. And the general's yelling. And Talal looks at me and goes, were you even in the military? I'm like, Amel Fial Jaish Fial Kuwato Hasa, which means, yes, I was in the Army and Special Forces. And he looked at the general and he goes, we will try it his way. And so, the next day they put me up in this resort hotel, giant conference room. They sent down 3 colonels, 3 sergeant majors, and we were rocking and rolling. We got everyone there. I was there maybe 2 weeks. They're like, hey, you need to come and get your check. So I walked there to get my check, and I'm like, well, can't you wire the money? They're like, no, we don't do that. You just take this to the bank. So I took it to the bank, and they literally gave me a stack of money like this.
Fuck yeah. I was hoping you were going to say, like, emeralds.
No, not emeralds, but just a stack of money like this. And I'm like, do you have a bag?
I would like a bucket of pearls.
It was an unbelievable amount of money, and it just kept coming and coming because I was unbanked over there because I wasn't working. So I was unbanked.
What did they expect you to do with it?
I had to put it in the safe in the hotel.
Yeah, those aren't big.
This one was pretty big. And that's what the question is. What do you do with all this money? So you have to slowly start sending it back through different channels and means. This was before FATCA. So, you still claim everything, but it was easier to get money back to the States.
Sounds like it was super legal.
Yeah, well, anyway,
I got no judgment. Live your life however you want to. That's fucking awesome.
So yeah, when it was all over, probably from here to here was all money in my room.
In U.S.?
In their currency.
Oh, that's only like $42.
No, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. But you just have to pace yourself, getting it back to repatriating it, as they say.
Man.
And so I ended up staying over there 3 years. I met my current wife over there. She was over there working. And then, as you know, I've developed that mobile app. Came back to the U.S., thought I was going to be some high-tech entrepreneur, and that just never went where we thought it was because the military wasn't using cloud services at the time, so it wasn't. But I've repurposed it. We use it for the farm, actually, to train the Chinese.
Tell people about what it is, though.
Okay, so it's you can go to trainasup.com. I still have it live and active, and I've modified it a few times. But what it is it's an assessment tool. So it allows you to build your own assessments because the framework is content agnostic. So you can take any material, put it in there, and generate different reports. And the other thing it does training. And it was designed to where, when I was in the military, you go out and you do all this great training, and it ends up being in some file cabinet that you really can't use or access unless it's some sort of special training and blah, 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 blah.
3-ring binder full of certificates.
Exactly. So I wanted to make it to where like a team leader or team sergeant can come in there, take that training, upload it into the platform, and the training would just go.
Yeah.
And so, we got a lot of traction with first responders, but there wasn't like a lot of money out there for it. Because I could go to like a shooting site, take some pictures, upload it right there on the site, and they could do the training for that platform right there. So, like I said, it didn't take off the way we thought it did, but it's still live. If anyone takes a look at it and they're interested, please let me know. And then I repurposed it for the farm because we have a lot of Chinese farmers. So because the training and the assessments are content agnostic, I can use any language. So we train the Chinese farmers that we have on basically the ordinances and different things, the rules on the site.
Is there a reason why you have a majority of Chinese farmers?
Yeah, because the growing style that we're using, they're the most adept at that type of growing
They're the subject
style.
matter
Yes,
expert.
which are these, they call them hoop houses or greenhouses. So they're the most adept at growing in this type of environment.
Okay.
But a lot of illegal grows in California use this methodology, and it is a lot of Chinese farmers that do it.
What do they traditionally grow with that in China? Is that just a staple of their
Well, cannabis is
agriculture?
illegal in China.
No, I mean just the hoop houses. What type of...
They grow usually outdoor.
Okay.
You know, what I found out doing this is back in the 80s, because, I talked to some of the older farmers, back in the 80s when the Chinese were experimenting with capitalism, they started in agriculture. So they told the farmers, listen, anything you grow outside your quota, you can sell and keep that money. And their quota was basically everything they grew at that time. So what the farmers did is they came up with these nutrients and different things to get bigger yields on the same amount of soil. So for our farm, we have this nutrient that we import from China to make the plants grow bigger and more hardy in this environment.
Okay.
So,
so we're still working our way. You're in
Yes.
UAE. What year is UAE? What are we talking here?
UAE was 2012 to 2016.
Okay, bring me up to
Yep.
when you got involved in this particular entrepreneurial venture.
So I developed a platform over there, and they were actually going to use it for their version of the National Training Center. We had one General Brian over there that he basically set up a national training center for the UAE, and they were going to use this as an assessment tool because it also worked offline. So you didn't have to be tethered to anything at the time. But we really couldn't come to agreement, and what they wanted to do is pay me down the road. Mm-hmm. But if you've ever worked in the Middle East, that means you're never going to get paid.
Inshallah.
Yes, you're never going to get paid because, we had vendors at the company I was at that hadn't been paid in 2 years. Yeah. But they did pay me, but I just was hesitant about doing that. So I came back to the U.S. and I attended a startup accelerator in Salt Lake City, Utah, called Boom Startup.
What exactly is that? What's a startup accelerator?
So what they do is they basically pick a class of 10, 15 people, and they train you on how to do your pitch, and then they provide people you can pitch to, and they'll invest in your platform and different things like that. So they're basically preparing you to go out and raise money.
Okay.
And so I did that. I didn't really get any investors at the time because a lot of people just didn't understand.
Were you still pitching the app essentially, to use a broad term? Okay.
Yes. So I was pitching the app, and then I'm like, man, this is harder than I thought. So I was very fortunate. I found a guy named Mike Crumlin. He's a West Point grad, Harvard MBA, former Task Force 160 Little Bird pilot, and he had done 3 successful startups and exited. And he became the CEO of the company, and he knew pretty much all of his classmates were generals in the Army at the time. And we got a lot of traction, but we were just hamstrung because of this cloud services. No one was on it, but now it's everywhere, right? And we tried to tell them, hey, listen, tier 1 units, they're already in, Amazon Cloud, and this is where they access stuff, and they're like, well, whatever.
For people who don't know what you're talking about when you say cloud services, kind of just break down what it actually does and what the military would use it for.
Yes, so cloud services are where you host your platforms. So like a mobile app, I can be anywhere in the world and access it from the cloud. And Amazon, they have cloud services that they use. The CIA uses their cloud services. Delta, you guys, every tier 1 unit uses it, to include the government. So what we ended up having to do with cloud services is we got what's called a FedRAMP Level 4 certification, which means any government thing like transportation or FBI or whoever, they could use this platform. But the Army at the time, like the Navy was in the cloud, other people were in the cloud, but the Army was just very resilient. But what we found,
you mean resistant.
Yes, yes, that's what I meant. Resistant.
Very different R word.
What we found out is that through training, TRADOC, right, Training and Doctrine Command, and I don't think this is classified, but they had like 278 servers in basements all over the U.S., and that's how their secure access to online training was.
Probably all connected through 1970s dial-up.
Who even knows where it's coming from, right? So that was their level of security at the time.
Question on the cloud. So Amazon creates these environments. How do they make it so that like Amazon employees aren't looking through that shit? Do they just create these siloed environments?
You know, I don't know enough about it on that side, but, you know, there's a former Ranger Battalion guy that runs the secure side of Amazon, you know, the military side. He'd maybe be a good guy for your
The problem is he would sit there where you are and go, I can't answer that. Like, no, you don't need to know that. All the questions I have, he's just going to sit there and go, nope.
True. You know, I think he'd be kind of flexible because, you know, they're trying to sell services, right? So they would be flexible in how they answer it. But
what do you think the impact would be if Amazon all of a sudden is like, oops, we turned the power off?
Yeah, a lot of people would be hurting. But I think that pretty much now is impossible because they have backup servers, right?
All over the place,
so like
yeah.
FedRAMP, if you're in FedRAMP level 4, the reason why it's secure is you're never accessing a server outside the U.S. And most of those servers, they only have 2 different server farms because if you're on the platform, you can see which servers where they're being accessed from.
That's kind of the strength of the cloud, right?
That's right.
There's really no way. If you shut down one place, it's task shared or load shared somewhere else.
Same way with the way you set up your mobile platform.
Yeah.
So I can have 10 users or I can have 10,000. And the cloud scales up for you based on the number of users.
Okay.
So that's what makes it more unique. So you're not like running all these servers like you're data mining or how people do Bitcoin mining. It scales up for you and that controls your costs.
Are people still actually doing Bitcoin mining? I remember
Yes.
for a while it was like a big thing.
It's not as big as it was, but now that the price is coming up, servers are coming back online.
Yeah, I used to hear updates from Riley, of all people, because he was having a hard time getting gaming computer components. Fucking Bitcoin farm. I'm like, what are you talking? I can't get this goddamn memory card.
Yes, yes. So we've had people talk to us about putting up solar farms to do Bitcoin mining. So, you know.
It's so weird that people are using the term mining for something it's math.
Yes, it is.
That rewards you, super complex math equation that rewards you with a fraction of a coin that doesn't actually exist but has value.
Well, there's a threshold based on how much the power costs that you can start mining and it makes it profitable. So...
Have fun.
Yes. I mean, I guess the great thing is you don't have to do much once it's up and running, right? So,
except buy probably millions of dollars worth of computers.
And pay that electrical bill every month.
That, I think, was the complaint that I've seen the most in newspapers is municipalities going, lights are going off in people's houses.
Well, I think you're having the same problem with electrical vehicles, right? So
no, you guys in California are right on the cutting edge. You're going to be what, all electric in like 6 months?
Yeah, we're heading that way.
I've heard the power grid is totally ready for it too.
Sure, yeah.
I love the congressional hearings where one of the senators or congressmen's asking, is the power grid in any way capable to sustain this idea? The guy's like, oh no, not at all.
It's pretty much the way it is in California. As you know, everyone's trying to escape. I have some friends that I visited down in Missoula yesterday. They're all from California, so you know.
One of the most common things I hear up here when it is complaints about people from out of town is, the damn Californians are ruining everything, and I think on that for a minute. I'm like, well, if you love California's politics, why would you leave?
That's right.
So the people coming up here are not generally the ones who I think are trying to necessarily change everything. They're the ones who go, California is like a baby's diaper.
Yes.
and I'm being forced to wear this, and I don't want to, so I'm going to go somewhere else. So I guess they could bring their politics with them, but in my experience, people who really love the environment that they live in stay.
Yeah, very true.
So
very true. So
far, nothing you've talked about touches on the cannabis world.
That's right. So, after my failed mobile app situation, because I was constantly trying to reach out to get people to help me. And I just found that a lot of, I'm a West Point grad. It's supposed to be this great network. No one would ever help you. So it's
Why do you think that is?
Because I'll probably get in a lot of trouble for this, but, I think they just feel if it doesn't help them, why would I help you? And I just feel that way. Though, I've had more help from SEALs and special operations guys than anybody else, especially SEALs, because I feel they're more business oriented and they understand business. And, the Marines also.
Are you doing stand-up comedy right now?
No. I know serious.
SEALs, to include myself, are fucking retards.
Well, I mean,
we don't know anything about business.
Maybe it's because the ones that, I went through a cycle when I was doing my recruiting, and I probably placed at least 20 SEALs with top-tier MBAs into real high-level jobs at, Boston Scientific.
What was their average tenure? 6 weeks?
No, they were there about 2 years. They were about there 2 years. So, I would call on them for help, and they would help me out. Whereas I would call, I've had some, whenever you do entrepreneurial stuff, you have some very high points, and you obviously have a lot of low points. And at my lowest points, when I just needed like a job, and I would, I have a classmate that's the CEO of Cessna, and I just wanted a $70,000 a year recruiting job because I had no money, and they'd be like, "Yeah, well, I can't give you an unfair advantage in this," or I mean, it's just really. I've placed over 1,000 people, and I can't get a shitty little recruiting job at Cessna. Come on, so
it's the term brotherhood is thrown around a lot in the community that I came from specifically. I don't know how it was in the Green Beret community. The absolute viciousness of some of, not all of, my peers, though, is kind of unbelievable. It's really easy to, get the Brotherhood tattoo or, wear the shirt.
Right.
I have seen it more often than not that they will stab each other in the back or hold somebody else down because I think, and this is a guess on my part, they see that person potentially becoming more successful than they will be, and they can't tolerate it. It actually has been, honestly, if I had to pick a word, it's been heartbreaking to a degree. The veteran community specifically, and I can only speak about the SEAL veteran community, there are some people in that who literally would do everything they can to fucking drag you down. And if you are successful, their first thing out of their mouth, just selling the Trident again. It's all about selling it. Like, God damn, man.
Yeah.
It's far less of a brotherhood than I originally thought it was.
I think, yes. I know with West Pointers, I don't even bother asking anymore.
Have you tried knocking your ring on the desk? I've heard that works well for Academy guys.
In a casual environment, but when you're really down and out, they're not there for you. And like I said, I hear people say burn the boats. The one guy on here, but
Matt Higgins, he's awesome.
But the reality is the one time I burned the boat, I really needed it to build shelter and firewood to feed myself.
Yeah.
So I just don't do that anymore. I always kind of have my backup plans now.
I don't think there is a perfect recipe for everybody.
Sure.
There's like the burn the boat philosophy, I think has great utilization. I personally don't think it is the perfect solution, though, for everything. But I also don't think a perfect solution for everything exists for every situation.
Yeah, I think it depends.
Early in your life, burn those motherfuckers.
Yes.
Later in your life, save a little bit for the A-frame.
And that's the other thing that, that is different. When you're in the military, you can burn the boats and do that because you're not going to die, right?
Well, it's also the taxpayer's boat.
Yes, it's a taxpayer's boat. But when you get,
it's like, hey, if we burn this, we're going to get issued another one, right? Oh, light that motherfucker on fire.
Yeah, but when you get out, I think it's much harder to have, that courage and that drive. And I say courage because, and I don't want to go too far off path, but I have a guy that was on my special forces team, and he did the right thing when he was a district attorney and turned over some exculpatory information, and they fired him and they burned him. And that's probably one of the biggest things of courage that I've seen, because he lost his whole career, but he did the right thing.
People shouldn't confuse courage with a guaranteed outcome that they're looking for.
That's right.
For sure. The machine, I mean, there are plenty of examples in the military of people standing up for the right thing and getting fucking steamrolled, as there is in the civilian world as well.
Yeah.
I actually think it's one of the issues with the current political environment we have. I was having this conversation with my dad yesterday. And, my dad's like 160, so he's seen a few. He might have been
around the block.
Yeah, he might have been there when they signed the Constitution, for all I know. But he's got far more laps around the sun than I do, and talking to him about politics. And I was asking him, like, do you think it's salvageable? Because he'll talk often about how when he was growing up, what he considered to be the Democratic Party, he doesn't really recognize it anymore. And what he considered to be the Republican Party, he doesn't recognize that anymore. And we're talking about term limits. And I personally am landing at the place where I don't think the system is salvageable until we start with something like term limits, because otherwise you have people who are in power. And what do people in power want to do? They want to stay in power.
Yes.
So you could bring the most altruistic person, like, who wants to get into that world. I'm going to change everything. And then they realize, like, if they try to butt heads with everybody, they're not going to get anything done.
Yeah.
So they either leave or they start drinking the Kool-Aid a drop at a time.
Yeah. But if you get out and if you're the type of person like you guys, you get out and meet people and talk to people, I think you find that people are really starting to get fed up with this. Because
I don't know
it's
what it'll take for them to make a change.
Yeah,
though.
because if you speak up, you get slapped down.
Right now you do.
Yeah.
I just don't know what it will take for that environment to actually change, though. Like, for us to have term limits, I'm pretty sure the people in power would have to vote on that. It's like, I need you to vote directly against your own personal interest. I know that hypothetically you won't be as good at picking stocks once you're out of this office, but what I need you to do is make it a maximum ceiling of how long you can stay, and then go back to being whatever it is you want to do with your life.
Or even if you set your financial goal and you reach it, and then you can move along.
I think, and I say this as somebody who has zero wealth, I think that once you hit that number, people start saying, well, I think more would be better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if you hit 100 million, then it's like, but your buddy has 150. You're like, fuck, I need that 150 lifestyle. But then you get there and you got a buddy who's a billionaire. You're like, I need that billionaire lifestyle.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I would be happy with just a little bit. So
I also would be happy with just a simple $1 billion. I mean, is it too much to ask?
No.
I would treat Michael to the finest masks. I would have emeralds in them and pearls. And
yeah. You guys, you're on your way. That's a beautiful store that we met up in.
I may just tell you right now, that store is never going to get me anywhere near $1 billion. It may be in the other direction where I pay somebody else.
Well, you know what? You might meet somebody in there and you guys will come up with $1 billion idea. That's the kind of
so
environment,
many of those, and they're terrible.
Oh,
all of my ideas are terrible, but I think they're worth $1 billion. But okay, so again, still
yes,
cannabis.
Hey, so what happened is I indexed on the mobile app, and I went by. I'm like, I got to do something where I can make money, but it's just blocking and tackling. It doesn't require a lot of thought. So I got into concrete and asphalt recycling, and
is that literally what it sounds like?
Yeah.
They pull asphalt up or concrete?
Yeah,
and
so what happened is California, as you know, they passed another gas tax, but this time they actually allocated the money to the roads. So there's a lot of road construction in California. And what they did is they found in this study that there's not enough virgin aggregate being mined on the whole western side of the U.S. to provide enough road base for all the road work that's going to be done.
Really?
Yes. So what they did is they authorized concrete and asphalt grindings to be utilized. They can be 100% utilized in the building with the road base. And sometimes the road base is 1.5 feet.
Oh, yeah.
And you do 1.5 feet by, a mile, you're talking hundreds of thousands of metric tons of grindings.
Before they passed that, what would have normally been done with when they pull it up to redo that? Would they just dump that somewhere and not use it again?
No, you mean the road base that's existing?
Well, before they passed that it could be recycled, what would they do with the previous road bases that they would remove? The concrete and asphalt. They weren't recycling it at that point?
No, they were they were crushing it, right?
Yeah.
And what happens is, recycled asphalt, you can use it for all kinds of different road projects and stuff like that.
So it doesn't use its utilization.
And then you need about 30, when you're making new asphalt, about 30% of that is recycled asphalt.
Okay.
So it is being utilized, but in different ways. Anyway, so I tried to do that. I got my certification from Cal Recycle to do that, and found a piece of land in L.A. County, and I thought I was all set, burned the boats on this one, and the county came out, and they just terrorized me until I had to abandon that. And
what was their issue?
Their issue was they didn't want it in their county. So they told me, even though I was certified from the state, they said, well, we have to rewrite our recycling regulations, so we're not going to allow this at this time. And I pointed out to them that they already had, it was called an inert debris type A processing facility. They already had one in the county.
Was there concern environmental, like impact in nature, or is it just the optics? They didn't want somebody doing that type of work.
I think it had to do, a lot of the landfills are run by really powerful people in California. Yes.
How dare you?
Maybe even some might be organized crime. I don't know. And this would take away a lot of business from them. Because when you're talking about you're bringing in a load of asphalt, right? That's $300 a truck. And you're doing 1,000 trucks a day.
What?
Yes, on some sites.
That's a lot of asphalt.
That's a lot of asphalt.
Holy
it's a lot
shit.
of concrete.
Yeah.
And it needs to be recycled, and it needs to be put back out into the system. And I was working with a guy that we had a unique setup in that we were going to a lot of the trucking in LA, in and around LA, is underutilized because you'll have a big contractor like a Skanska or tunneling company, and they'll hire these trucks, and the trucks go to the dump site and back, to the dump site and back. Yeah. And he had a platform that was kind of like Uber, so they would be able to pick up loads along the way and drop them along the way, but still not lose timing and their place in line. So the contractors would make money, the drivers would make more money, and we would be, I don't want to say saving the environment, but because they're not diverting from their route much more than normal, you would basically save on emissions as well. Huh. And so that was a big component of what we were going to do. County shut it down. And that's when I told you I was at that pretty low point. I had to send my wife and daughter back to China to live with their family. And I was actually camping on that site that I was leasing because we paid the lease. And then 2 months later, fire came through, burned everything. And I finally moved back in with my parents down in Banning.
How old were you when that happened?
That was in 2019. So that was 5 years ago. I was 50-year-old man.
That is a hard reset.
That's a hard reset. But during that time, I my wife had come back, and I started meeting these Chinese people and learned about farming. And this Chinese guy, I don't know if I should say his name, but he used to work for the Chinese military, and he wanted help. He was doing illegal grows. And he wanted help getting a legal farm on an Indian reservation.
What year was this?
This was 2001.
What year? 2001 or 2021?
2021, sorry.
What year did California pass Prop 96?
Oh, it's been a decade at least.
Okay, so it was already
yes.
legal. Well, so Prop 96, how does this work? Because Montana switched to recreational and medicinal as well. So State legal, but federally still illegal, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so Prop 96 would allow them to grow and sell inside of certain parameters, and the federal government's just like, fuck it, you do what you want and we won't pay attention?
So what happened is the government in 2014, they issued something called the Wilkinson Memo, and it basically, in essence, what it said is it told Indian tribes, if your state allows this, as long as you mirror their regulations, we're not going to bother you.
And this is for tribal land?
Yes, for tribal land.
I thought they were a sovereign nation.
They are a sovereign nation. They are a sovereign nation.
So why did they need that memo?
Because it's still illegal federally.
But if you're a sovereign nation, does that matter?
Well, because the FBI and federal agencies, they can enforce criminal actions on reservations, even though they are sovereign nations.
Okay.
So if there's, my understanding, because I have a bunch of classmates that are in the FBI, and I talked to them before I ventured out on this, and they said if there's a threat of violence or there's violence occurring in related to cannabis or this or that, then the FBI can investigate and go talk to it. But what the Wilkinson Memo specifically said is you got to mirror the state, and as long as it doesn't involve human trafficking, gangs, and they just listed out a number of things there, they're not going to mess with you.
Why was this particular individual looking at tribal land? What was it about that was appealing?
Because he wanted to have a legal cannabis farm,
which was still illegal in California at that time?
He was operating in a legal farm down in Blythe, down by the border.
No.
Yes. He was operating in
what
a
legal rapscallion.
Legal farm down in Blythe, and he wanted to have a legal farm.
Yeah.
So I had met him, and a lot of drinking and hanging out. I mean, the Chinese people, they drink like rocket fuel stuff. I'm like, oof. But anyway, so I ended up working with him. I did the engineering designs. I laid out the farm. I did all the paperwork, due diligence with the tribe. There were tribal members there that I went to high school with, and I helped him get his farm, essentially.
What was the tribe's response to it? Was that the first time that they had been approached, or was that already something that they had been doing?
They already had a farm.
Okay.
That had been in existence for about a year and a half, but it wasn't really. They had some issues. It wasn't generating money like they thought it was. They didn't have a really good business plan, and it wasn't organized very well. The way it was laid out, the farm didn't have water. It wasn't well thought out. Let's just say it turned into be like a trailer park with some cannabis growing in it, but a large one where you have maybe 300 greenhouses and people living in trailers just farming out there. And but it wasn't generating the revenue because it wasn't as organized as it should be, and so I helped him get his farm. And what happened is after about 8 months, they defaulted on the farm, which means they didn't pay the rent, they didn't pay the tribe. You pay the tribe a tax based on gross revenue.
I was going to say they have to get something out of this.
Yeah. You pay them on gross revenue, and they also charge you a lease for the farm.
What was the issue that they were having that caused the default?
I mean, from what I could see is poor farming practices.
Yeah.
Because what they were doing is, I'll just tell you straight up, it was a pyramid scheme. What they were doing is they would sell like each one of these greenhouses for like $10,000, and then they would never let the people access it to start farming.
That's a good investment.
And so what they did is they diverted the money. When we took over the farm, they had camels, they had llamas, they had just
camels.
Camels, yes. If you wanted a camel ride, you could go out there and ride them.
Okay.
And they just had all kinds of exotic animals and cars, and they just spent it on everything other than farming. So they, like I said, they defaulted. They defaulted, and I spoke with the leadership because he also owed me $200,000, and he never paid me. So I had left, and after about month 3, because I laid out the farm, did everything, and I said, "Where's my money?" And he's like, "Well, we'll get it to you." And I seen him just wasting it on other stuff.
Up until that point, though, was that your only interface in the cannabis world? You were helping them out purely with it from like an engineering perspective?
Yes, all the infrastructure, water, hoops, electrical, just the engineering portion of that, because I had a California engineering license, so not that you need it on the res, but everything's supposed to be done in compliance with Riverside County Code.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Anyway, so yes, I was helping them from that perspective, and they defaulted. I spoke with the leadership. They have it's called DCAC, the Desert Coulee Agricultural Commission, and they asked me if I was interested in taking over the farm. And I said, well, let me think about it, because I knew the terms of the lease and everything because of that. So we worked out some terms with them, and we took over the farm in September of 2022.
Okay, so 8 months ago?
About 8 months ago.
Okay.
And we still had some legacy farmers there.
What was the condition like when you took it over? Like, is this a picture of what it was when you took it over, or what you built it into?
This is what it looked like what we built it into just before the raid.
Michael, do you have pictures on the thumb drive?
It'll say, before the raid.
I don't know which one. Before the raid?
Yeah, it'll say before the raid.
I just want people to be able to see the size and scope of this.
So it
didn't look like this when you took it over, but this was the footprint of what you eventually took over?
Yes. So, yep, that's it. That's what it looked like before the raid.
Okay,
we had about 279 hoops that were built. Only 78 had active cannabis in them because the business model we had to use was renting the space, because everyone was kind of onto the Ponzi scheme where you charge 10 grand and blah, 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 blah. So what we had to do with all the farmers is charge a rental. And then we had what we call corporate hoops, right, which they're owned by the company. We had our own investors. We were able to, get a sizable investment, and we had our own corporate hoops, and that's how we ran the farm. And I was in charge of the infrastructure. My partner, Bobby, he's a master grower. He's been in the business for 30 plus years. So he ran the grow side, and I ran the infrastructure side and compliance and paperwork. Because we do run this program exactly like the state does. Every plant is tagged. Every month we send up a report.
Who do you send it to?
We send it to the tribe. Okay. So that was one of the things that helped us after the raid with our lawsuit, is that everything was documented. So, they destroyed about 18,299 plants. Which is about $6 million in cannabis.
Well, lead me up until that point. How was it when you first took over? Like, how was the process in building it to this?
Yep. So what we did when we took over is we had to start building the hoop houses. So you got to have this, and you got to put in the electrical, and you got to get them up and running. So from September, October, November was the process of getting the hoops together and putting the plants in it. And on December 15th is when we were scheduled to harvest. So that's when all the plants would have been ready. We would have started drying, trimming them, and selling them. So everything went normal, like you would normally do. Your plants are growing. Harvest looks great. We're in compliance with everything.
Any issues with law enforcement up until this point?
So what happened is we heard that 3 weeks before so let me say this. The raid occurred on 7 December, which is Pearl Harbor Day.
Okay.
3 weeks prior to that, another farm had been raided, and I saw the police helicopter over our property. And I said, you know what, I need to go talk to the sheriff's department. So I took my license and my other paperwork down to the Thermal Sheriff's Department. I said, listen, I saw that you guys did this raid. Here's the paperwork for my farm. Here's all of my contact information. If you want to come see the farm or you have any issues with me, just give me a call, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions, get you any additional documentation. And the lady that took the paperwork said, well, let me see if the chief, the sergeant, whoever is available. And she called back, and he's like, no, I don't want to talk to him. So I left. And I was living at that time in a caretaker's house on the property. It's a 3-bedroom house. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 or 4 in the morning, I hear "This is the Riverside Sheriff's Department. Come out with your hands up." And I'm like, what the hell is that? And I look out the window, and there's like a giant MRAP out there. There's people with guns. There's a helicopter flying around. And I'm like, well, I guess I better go out. So I went out with my hands up. They handcuffed me and detained me. I was handcuffed, for probably about 4 hours before they brought me into interrogation. And this was with Inspector Villacenter was the guy's name. And they sat me down, and I said, hey, I took all my paperwork in there, and this is a legal farm. We have the signage up. We have all of this. And he goes, why do you think we're here? I go, I'll take a lawyer at this time. So I had reminded him that it was a farm. It was a legal farm. Mm-hmm. So they took me out, patted me down again, handcuffed me, and I was handcuffed for probably another 4 hours before they took me down to booking. And what I didn't realize at the time was two tribal members, the vice chairman, Joseph Morales, and Elaine Pendelosa, had come down with the BIA paperwork showing them that it was sovereign land and that it had been brought into trust 2 years ago. And they didn't want to have anything to do with it. They didn't want to see it and anything like that.
Yeah, but don't they have no choice in whether or not they want to see it or not?
Yes, they denied seeing it. So they brought in all their equipment. They had you'll get a kick out of this. They had all these little agencies all kitted up like they were going to be smashing the X or something, and running all over the place with their guns and their vests and all their kit. And you can see the damage that they did. They basically destroyed everything: electrical infrastructure, water infrastructure, just everything. They just tore everything up, even though...
Is it possible for you, Michael, to pull up these side by side?
Yeah, which ones?
So if you can, pull up that before one that you did before, and then this one, the after.
Okay. So here's...
That's before. Yep.
Before. Let me see if I can... Would it be overall damage?
Probably.
Let's see.
God damn it, Michael, just start opening shit up.
That's what I'm doing. Oh,
it's like your DMs, people sending you cock shots. Just get it.
I know, right?
That's
all
right.
Hold on.
So before and then after. So they basically, they destroyed the whole farm. And so they took me down to booking.
So they're denying that this is on reservation property.
That's right.
How can they do so? What justification do they have to deny the fact that this is on federal or on tribal land?
So what the guy told me is that they had contacted the county or whoever does paperwork. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but it was clear that that it was in trust for over 2 years, and I sent you the documents and stuff. So it's been registered with the BIA, and I think what happened is, this is just my thoughts, is they didn't call the Sacramento BIA. They probably called some government office. And most of these government workers have been working from home since 2020, right? So he probably didn't have access to everything that you would normally have. So they're probably relying on some clerk that doesn't have the most up-to-date database, and this paperwork is sitting somewhere because nobody's coming into the office anymore. So that's what they're trying to say, but they had plenty of warning. The paperwork, they brought it down, that we have signs on the property saying that it is federal land, and they had every opportunity to make a new decision. And they just, my thinking is they wanted the headline, Green Beret busted with 2 tons of cannabis, or whatever their headline would have been at that time. So
keep walking me through that day. So you've been cuffed twice now.
So I'm the only person that's cuffed. The rest are all my Chinese farmers. But, they also had INS there. They wanted to see if we were, had illegal people there. Everyone on the property has a security badge. So everyone passed through INS, no problem. Obviously, I felt bad for my wife. She was terrified, and going through INS and all of this. Yeah. Thank God everyone else wasn't handcuffed. I was the only one that was handcuffed.
Why do you think that is?
I think I want to say the second time after I asked for a lawyer was out of spite, right?
Yeah, but why would you be the only person cuffed the first time to begin with?
Because they knew I was in charge of the farm, for one, because I went down there and gave them all the paperwork. So
it's a weird move, though, right? If they think the farm is illegal and it's being illegally farmed, to handcuff one of however many people that you had there?
Yes, I was the only one handcuffed.
It's a little wild.
And obviously the amount of time is too much. You know, I think there's regulations regarding this, and it's part of our lawsuit, of course, civil rights violation. You know, and I've had to have surgery on my hands. I have one surgery already here, and I got to get surgery on the other hand because it just, like, it was burning all the time. And so there was some nerve damage, and you can see the VA, they did a great job. They hacked up my hand pretty good.
That's what they're known for.
Yeah. So
VA stands for very awesome. I don't know if you know
yes. So they arrested me. I went down, I got booked, and they told me I had to be at court in 60 days. So I got released.
And is that what you returned back to? The picture on the right?
That's what I returned back to.
How long did it take them to do that? Like a day?
They were there the whole day. They had machinery and equipment, and probably there were, there were 100 people there. Just all kinds of agencies and people there just cutting stuff up, tearing up our electrical, tearing up our water, just anything they could do to, I guess, disable the farm.
What authorization do they have to do that? I mean, I'm not an expert in law enforcement by any stretch, but I can understand seizing things that would be illegal. Where do they derive the authority to destroy things?
I don't, that's a good question. I don't know.
And maybe they do have it. I don't know, but damn.
So they have a new tactic now that they're using, though, in California. Instead of destroying it, they'll spray this spray over the farms, and then they'll come back a couple days later and dust off to get it to stick to the plants, and it'll kill the plants. So they're being less, I guess, hands-on. But in this case, they made a mistake. And this is how I know they made a mistake. One, because it's sovereign land, they can't be there. And there's...
I was going to ask you, these were state law enforcement.
County
law enforcement.
Riverside Sheriff's Office.
On sovereign land. And the reason I had asked you before about sovereign land, so a federal agency could potentially at least come on there.
That's right.
State, though, or county.
They're not allowed.
Gotcha.
So, and just as a backup is... the other farm they had, they call it the Hayes farm. They've had the DEA and FBI out there inspecting it, so, and they've given them some guidance, like you need to do this and this, and have these clipboards that have the strain and different stuff. So they've had federal inspections before, and there were no issues. So this was just one of those things where this land went into tribal trust 2 years ago, and they had bad information. And even though they were warned a number of times, they decided to destroy the farm. So, I mean, it's going to be very difficult for them to say, nobody told us, or we did the X, Y, and Z. I mean, if you're going to destroy $8 million worth of property, let's do our homework, Let's take a little bit of time, especially when tribal members come down with the paperwork, and not just any tribal members, the senior members of the tribe. And
how were they received?
They wouldn't let them inside the perimeter. So that the interviewer, the interrogator, he'd use that. He's like, well, why do you think the tribe's not here? They don't care. This isn't their land, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I'll take a lawyer. I just know from my buddy being with the DA's office, he's like, don't say anything to him. Yeah. But I did want to get it on record that I went down with my paperwork, and that I had seen the tribal paperwork that this is sovereign land, and that I told them you should check with the tribe before you destroy the property. So I wanted to get all that on record before I asked for an attorney. And then that's when they went out and patted me again and handcuffed me and, treated me like a dog.
Just from my own understanding, so prior to that 2 years when it got pulled into a trust, What was the land being used for then?
It was a duck farm. So if you look in this on the before picture, you see if you go straight to the back where there's those ponds in that green area, that's what it was.
I bet that smelled really good.
You know, I didn't realize this, but this was a very big, this whole area is a very big duck hunting area. So this was a duck hunting area, and, you know, you can see we graded it and put up the farm.
And then it made its way back into tribal possession, for lack of a better term, because somebody made the realization that it used to be tribal land and it was just recovered by the tribe? Or how did that process play itself out?
So what happens is with tribes, right? So a lot of people don't know this, but the Torres Martinez tribe, they are the second largest landholder of all the Indians. But it's broken up into these squares, like these little pixel squares. And then the reason why they did that is because the railroads coming through there, they needed to have easements. So the Navajo, they have the largest contiguous reservation. It spans 4 states, but they have the second largest land mass of Indian tribes, but it's in different squares.
Interesting.
So if somebody donates land or gives them land or they buy land and it's in their ancestral area, they can bring it into trust.
Okay. And that essentially means it becomes native land.
That's
again.
right. It becomes sovereign land. So a lot of people, you know, in California, they own ranches, right? And they're like, well, this used to be Indian land, and they die and they give it back to them, right? So because it was taken unfairly or whatever. So that happens quite a bit in California because, you know, there's hundreds of tribes in California, and then they can bring it into trust.
All right. So you're let out of jail. I was going to say prison. You're not there yet.
Not there yet.
You might be, though. You never know.
Yes. And they gave me a notice to report back in 60 days.
And this was still in December.
For court, yeah.
Okay.
So I had to go to court in 60 days. And so I went back to the farm. It was the next day, the next morning. And I drove up to the gate, right? And when I drive up to the gate, I see Investigator Villacenter and this other sergeant. And I roll down the window. I go, "Are you guys here for me?" And they're like, "No." And
where's the gate in that picture?
The
where
gate
would it be?
Is, you see where that brown building is to the far right?
Yep.
If you come straight forward, there's a gate up there. Yep, right there. And you come straight forward, there's a gate there. And so what happened is the tribe, DCAC, they also have a building on this property. So they breached their safe, took all their money, you know, they destroyed.
They took the tribe's safe.
They took the tribe's, well, because they came in and they said, "Hey, do you want to open this safe? Or we're gonna open it ourselves." I'm like, "It's not my safe. It belongs to the tribe." Again, I would reiterate that you contact the tribe. Anyway, they breached the safe. They took a lot of their money, because all the rents, all the taxes, all that is paid to, you know, these people, and then they take it to the bank. And so they took all of their money. But what they also did in there is they had a giant pizza party inside their office.
Shut the fuck up.
I'm not bullshitting. A fucking giant fucking pizza party. They had so many pizza boxes stood up that, you know, and high-fiving each other, that they left their radios and cell phones in the office.
That part checks out.
They were underneath all of the pizza boxes after their little celebration, and I saw my buddy coming out with all their bags with their cell phones and stuff, and that's what they were there for. But
so
they knew not to.
Investigators that you ran into were actually just there to get gear that their people had left behind.
That's right. And so they had left their gear there, and they knew not to come into the compound at that time, right? And, you know, usually what happens when this happens, immediately they post up all their attaboy pictures on Facebook and Twitter and all this other stuff. Nothing. You can't find anything about this raid on the internet.
Can you find anything about the raid that they had done previously that you had?
Sure.
So, you know, the one where you recognized the helicopter and then you went in with your paper? Is there stuff about that raid?
I'm sure. Yes,
okay.
For sure.
I'm just trying to
So they
see how they treated it differently.
Yes. So they completely treated it differently. They knew they were wrong. And the other thing is, while they were there, they cut all of the power and everything, right? So what happened is, you know, as we're trying to get reorganized, and obviously it's about $8 million in damages, including the plants, the buildings, all the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And what happened is about on January 8th, somebody set our house on fire. And it burned to
the house that you're living at on
that
the
I was
property?
living in on the property, and it burned to the ground. And it wasn't an electrical fire.
Oh,
it was
shit.
It was arson. It was arson. We asked for it to be investigated, and they did nothing. And we could have put the fire out, but we didn't have any power to the water well. So we had no power because they designated this as a drug house. So the electric company wouldn't turn the power back on for 4 months until it got cleared. And it just burned. I lost everything. Again, I lost everything. So I finally get to court on day 60, whatever the day was. It was February 6th or something. And I have my attorney there. He's another former DA. And they didn't have court. They just didn't show up. They didn't file any charges.
The prosecutors didn't
They
show
had
up.
not. They didn't even file charges.
What did your
against me.
lawyer say about that?
He's like, you got a good case here. So they were excited. And then, so I went down to try and get my personal property because they had my laptop, my guns, my phone, everything. They had all my personal documents, tax documents, everything. And they said, I went down there to the thermal station. They said, well, we can't give it back to you because it's an active investigation. And I'm like, all right. So probably 3 weeks later, I'm having dinner at my parents' house, and they announce on the TV that the state attorney general is launching an investigation into Riverside Sheriff's Office. And no shit, the next day they called me to come pick up my stuff.
Really?
Yes.
I'm sure that was purely coincidental.
Yes, purely coincidental. Had nothing to do with anything. Just, they just did it to be dicks. They didn't file any charges. They just were doing it to be dicks. And these are the kind of things that they continue to do. They would fly over with helicopters still.
Well, what happens when you go to court? Like you I'm sure, sourced an attorney. You get prepared to go to court. That's 60 days later. When they don't show up, does a judge dismiss it? Like, what happens?
Yeah, so there's two parts, right? The criminal part and then obviously the civil part. So the criminal part is they didn't file charges.
Even after all of this, after they had their team of people who did all of this.
Yes, because they charged me with, distribution and, all kinds of charges.
Originally, you show up to court though, and none of that stuff is there anymore.
The RSO, the Riverside Sheriff's Office, they never filed any charges with the DA.
So they booked you on those charges, but didn't file them.
That's right. But it's still on my record because, a few weeks after that, I got a notice from TSA that they were canceling my pass, right? And then I got other notifications
You're
from
going to be like the rest of us, the rest of the peasants.
Yes, I got
back of the hand, back of the hand, back of the hand.
I started getting all these notifications that you're cleared as pulled and this and that and the other thing. So that part is still on my record, so it hasn't been cleared. We have to file paperwork to do that.
So after you show up for the court, 60 days, they don't show up. What's your next step?
Yeah, so what happens is from the point that the incident occurs, you have 120 days to file a tort claim. So the first step in the process is you have to file a tort claim with the county. And basically it says, these are my damages. Do you want to pay me the money that you owe me? And so what I did is a guy who's a longtime friend, he was also with Riverside Sheriff's Office, and he contacted these attorneys. Larson, he's a former federal judge, super nice guy. They took my case, and what was happening is the county was trying to draw things out to the last day, right? So it was the Thursday before my paperwork was due on that Monday.
The 120 paperwork?
So if you don't file this paperwork, you can't file a suit.
Interesting.
So they were trying to draw it out because Larson's like, well, we have this meeting set up on Friday and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I felt backed into a corner. So I filed the tort paperwork that Thursday. And I guess that set off a lot of alarm bells, and they pulled any offer they were going to make to us. But, I was told that the county was going to extend the deadline. But if you read the regulation, because the guy on my team, Chris, said, no, this is a state statute. They can't extend that. So if you don't file this, you're going to lose your right to sue them.
Yeah.
And this isn't a county case. This is a federal case.
Because it's sovereign land.
Because it's on federal land. So they're not going to have as much chicanery as they would in Riverside County, right? Because they know all the judges. They know all these different people. This is going to be a federal case, and they're going to have to litigate it there. And it's going to be much more challenging for them because there's some very clear-cut things that they did wrong. So I was originally just trying to get my 6, 7, 8 million back, but now we're going for a lot more, obviously, because we've lost multiple crops, and I've also lost people saying, well, I don't want to go there, you guys have been raided and this and that. So we've lost a lot of business, we've lost multiple crops, we lost our reputation that we had in the business, and so this month we'll be filing the federal lawsuit.
What does it look like from there once you do that? How much time do they have?
Yeah, so what I found out is, I thought I really wanted to settle because I didn't want to have 3, 4, 5 years of my life just being drug out like this. But apparently I was told that when you file in federal, they try to put you on a 9 to 12 month schedule. And they are pretty rigid with that. They don't veer off it too often. Each side may have the ability to extend a few months. Otherwise, they follow that pattern and move forward diligently. Okay. So it shouldn't take that long to get this litigated.
Is the sheriff's office they're operating, or they're telling you they're operating under the premise that this was an illegal grow? Illegal?
Yes, they're trying to say it was an illegal grow.
Okay.
Yes.
Because taking away the federal land aspect of it, even though Prop 96 exists in California, they still have the authority to raid illegal growing operations, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Man, they are going to have an uphill battle trying to justify the actions that they took.
Yes, especially because it's legal in California to grow cannabis.
Yeah.
So they're trying to enforce a legal law on a sovereign nation. It's just there's really no excuse for it, especially as much, normally I don't know why they did this, because they normally contact the tribe and, they try and work through it, but they just tried to ramrod this, and now it's coming back to bite them.
I mean, I don't know anything about the laws in California, but I'm just looking at that picture. I mean, I think it's fair to say that you weren't disguising what you were doing.
No. No.
That's not a rollerblade park.
No.
That's not a water slide park.
See, and the other thing is these guys they're very spiteful, right? So what they tried to do after...
Spiteful why?
I'll tell you exactly how they weaponized code enforcement. So what they tried to do is after they destroyed the farm, they tried to come back and say there were these code violations, right? But the chairman of the tribe, Chairman Tortes, he basically punched him in the face and said, you have no authority on my land. Don't send me this stuff. And so what happened is, I'm speculating this because I just submitted the FOIA request, and they contacted California OSHA, which contacted the federal OSHA.
Okay.
And I know it was them, or I suspect it was them, because everything that they cited when they tried to close the farm down was listed with the federal OSHA. So federal OSHA contacted me, and they said, hey, we got this thing. We want to come out and inspect the farm, blah, 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 blah. So they came out with their list. They had these 5 items, and they inspected the farm. They found some minor things, like the ladder didn't have safety stickers on it, or this...
Like, don't stand on this rail?
This light plate didn't have... like a cover on it, just little minor things, right? And all the things that were listed, like exposed wires, exposed electrical wires, that was caused by the sheriff's department. So I showed them, look, this is where you can see the tire tread, this is where they ripped them out of the ground, and then they're trying to file this. So, I talked to the head guy down there. We closed out with OSHA. We've corrected these few little problems that they have. And now they're going to be sending a letter back to the state OSHA saying, all of these claims that you made were not there. So why would you do this? And this is going to be part of the FOIA request where we'll know who filed it, and they will have received this letter saying all these false claims you made against these guys because you tried to weaponize OSHA and code enforcement, it's going to come back to you in our case. So it continues to mount, right? They can't get through one way. And, to be honest, I'm a little fearful for myself and my family. So, we're kind of living off the grid, hidden now because, they had trackers on our vehicles. They were following us around. So they would know that I'm not out.
We talking
selling.
like air tags or some high speed
No. They had trackers on my vehicle, the head of the Cannabis Commission, all these people where they're tracking us. Because they what happened is, so the head of DCAC,
what's that?
The Desert Coulee Agricultural Commission.
Okay.
They contacted her and said, we have a tracker on your car and we need to remove it. Where are you located? They knew where she was located.
Hey, fuckface, look on your software. You can see where I am.
Yeah. So they took the tracker off her car. So I'm just assuming that I had a tracker on my vehicle as well. So that makes it even worse for them because now they're trying to say I was involved in distribution where they're tracking me. So I'm not going anywhere other than Costco, Home Depot, just the normal places that normal citizens go. I'm not going out to deal drugs or sell anything. And they have all of that data. And they're supposed to, after a certain period of time, if they can't make the case, they're supposed to remove the tracker. But they kept the tracker on her vehicle for, 4 months, 5 months, which is just a huge civil rights violation.
I feel like the discovery process in this might be a nightmare.
Yes. It's not going to go in their favor.
How's the tribe been? What's their response to this?
Tribe has been very supportive to us, and they said anything they can do to help us. So they've been very supportive, and they're now kind of putting in more procedures to safeguard the farms, being more proactive and different things like that. So.
How more proactive could you be, though, than going down to the sheriff's office with the documentation? Honestly, like you could put all the signs you want to on all four corners or every inch of the fence, but if you go down to the guy making the decisions and he doesn't even want to see the paperwork, I don't know how you get more proactive than that. Maybe
liaison more, have contact with them more often, but they'd
have to be willing to do that.
Yeah,
though.
They just completely circumvented the tribe on this particular raid. So,
man, when do you file the federal lawsuit?
It's going to be this month, so they're working on it right now. We're waiting for this FOIA request to come back from OSHA and different stuff just to strengthen the case, and it's going to be a good one.
Let's say it all ends up going in your favor. Is this something that you would do again? Or would you move on in your life and do something else?
No, I definitely am going to move on. But I'm in a situation now where, I took investor money and I owe people money. So I have to keep the farm going to get them their returns. So, hopefully by the end of the year, they'll start getting some of their money back. I was originally going to pay them back out of, this settlement if I got it here last month. That didn't happen. So, I have a responsibility to keep going to pay them back because the farm will get back on its feet. It will start being revenue positive. We've had to change our business structure. So what we had to do this last round is because we didn't have the resources to do our own corporate hoops, because it's expensive to get the plants and the potting and the water systems and all of these. We just rented the greenhouses out. So we lost money this last cycle, but we should break even and then be ahead as we move forward.
And you did it right back on the same property inside of the same infrastructure?
Yes, same thing, same property, yep.
Is it looking more like the original back at this point?
Yeah, we have what we call some super hoops that we built. They're double hold hoops that they can grow in during the summer, because right now it's about 117 out there, and you can't grow in these type of greenhouses right now. And we have a couple
people. 117 outside the hoop house.
Yes.
So it's about 700 inside.
Yeah. So it's there, you can grow some stuff, but we have some indoor growing going on now in containers.
Yeah.
And we also have people growing in these double super hoops. We call them super hoops, but they're double hold. They keep cooler. And what they do is, the way that we kind of circumvent things during the summer is the water's coming from the well, right? So it's colder when you pull it out of there. Mm-hmm. And what happens is we have these drip systems, and the fans pull the water across. So we try and keep it to where the water is cold, and we pull it across. So you don't store the water like you normally do. You do it in real time to where it keeps the plants cool, and usually that allows you to get some yields. Not what you would ultimately want, but you can still grow.
What's been the most surprising thing that you have encountered diving into the growing world, the cannabis world, that you weren't expecting? Because, you dove into this from an engineering perspective, like, hey, I'll help you lay this out, and
yes.
Now you're an actual owner of one of these.
Yeah, so there's, the thing that's most difficult for me is, these farms, they when you have too many farmers, they become chaotic, right? Because people are all stepping on each other, and you talked about it either where people are shitting on each other, and that's what happens here. Like, they'll cut off the water and they'll do this, so you're constantly dealing with these. So
you could literally have, if you're looking at it again like this, the before damage, even though there are multiple structures like one next to each other, they could be owned by different people, so they could be infighting, is what you're saying.
That's right.
Yeah.
So people own 5, 10, whatever. So that was the most frustrating part, and we went through it this next period. But when we move on to the next phase in September, we're going to have just one company doing 200 of the same greenhouses, because they kind of have a unique planting system. They plant it like corn, and they irrigate it, and they need less people, and they have higher yields, because usually some of the plants, depending on the strain, you have to trim them a couple times during the growth cycle. Mm-hmm. These you don't have to trim. So you save a lot of money on personnel, water, and you can't do it during the summer, so we're off right now. We're redoing all the water and infrastructure. But they'll take over those 200 greenhouses. And so that's the biggest thing that we learned, is to more uniform the process, like with a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
That's where you start making money. As you have a uniform process, it's going, and that's where you can start generating revenue. Having all these different farmers, it's too chaotic. They don't follow the rules. It's a mess.
Any interaction with law enforcement since you've started rebuilding?
Yeah, in fact, they've flown over the site with their helicopters on separate occasions, which, obviously freaks out the farmers. They're all panicked and stuff like this. And, we just had an incident last week where people were being spotlighted on our site.
From the air or from the ground?
From the air.
Interesting.
From the air. And then we've caught code enforcement and RSO outside the property, taking notes, trying to do their thing for OSHA and everything. So, again, I don't know if they're tracking me. People sometimes, you're just more hyper vigilant, so you see the police more often. So,
especially when you're looking for them. Yeah,
it's probably my imagination, but I feel like I'm being tracked, and it's only a matter of time where they're trying to, get me. So it's been mentally challenging, and
What do you want to do beyond the cannabis world? Obviously I can definitely appreciate your desire to pay back your investors.
Yes.
Honorable way to go for sure. I can understand the desire to not probably want to play in that world after you do so. What would you want to do next?
So for me, this is probably the last thing I'm going to do work-wise. The one thing I do know is that if I do something, it's not going to involve any sort of county or government entity because they just have too much power now. And they have, they're protected. They're covered by lawyers and stuff like this. So they feel like they can just do whatever they want. So, I just wouldn't do anything that requires any sort of government regulation. It's a recipe for failure. No doubt about it. I would definitely like to go back into recycling.
I feel like there's going to be a level of regulation associated with that.
Well, there is, but there's also you can acquire properties that already have the license.
Yeah, I still feel like somebody's going to come check on that license, and that somebody is going to be associated with the government.
True, but when you're making big rocks into little rocks,
Man.
So, yeah, I don't know. I would love to say I have a plan, but right now I'm just surviving. I'm trying to get through. I have some great attorneys that are going to be working on this. I was really hopeful with the Larson Group.
Yeah.
But nothing ever happens the way you want.
What do the attorneys say? The people on your side of the house who are taking a look at this from a legal perspective, what's their feedback? Their
feedback is, I don't want to say nothing's ever a slam dunk.
For sure.
But they're...
Paint with a broom. Broad
brushes.
But
I think I sent this to you, what Larson and those guys said.
It said draft, so I'm like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't pull that sucker up, and just put it on the internet.
No, there's a lot of case history and stuff on here. And I would be concerned if it was a county case. But because it's a federal case and there's clear law behind it, I feel like they're not going to be able to squirm out of it because it's multifaceted. It's not just they destroyed the property. It's the handcuffing. It's the keeping my stuff longer than they should have. It's the weaponizing of OSHA. It's the weaponizing of code enforcement. It's like the cover up becomes worse than the crime, and it's ridiculous. It's spite. It's something children would do. Yet here you have the sheriff's department doing that. And I think I had mentioned to you earlier, I was listening to Sheriff Bianca on California Insider, which is a very popular like 30-40 minute TV show, and he was on there, and minute 13 in his thing, he's like, the biggest problem we have in California right now is people not taking responsibility for their actions. And here they are not taking responsibility for their actions when they know they were clearly wrong. And just so you know, this is the first time I've said anything publicly about this because I always have had a healthy respect for law enforcement, and I always had the expectation that the county would do the right thing and admit that they were wrong, but they have just went and tried to continually make my life more and more miserable. And, like my drill sergeant used to say, Sergeant Padilla, you can only kick a dog so long before it bites you back. So now I have to start saying something because I've been more than fair, never, shit on them, said anything bad about law enforcement or any of them. But now they've just, it's too much. It's, we've given you a chance and you've decided not to do the right thing.
I wonder if they will even want to go through the scrutiny of the legal process, specifically the discovery process, where they got to hand all of those things over. I wonder if it will even go that far.
Well, the other thing my attorneys told me is that we'll be filing federally, obviously, but what they've noticed is when there's cases involving the county and the state, jurors now, they are tired of the government control and them squeezing them and twisting them, and everywhere they turn, they're taking their money. They're doing this, that they are getting record awards are being handed down by juries now because people just can't take it anymore. They're tired of the manipulation and the lying and all of these things that come with government. And, even in California, as liberal as they are and all of that, it's people are just tired of it. They don't want it anymore.
Yeah, again, I'm not an expert on the government, but I don't think that was ever the design of the government, was to be to choke the life and free will and spirit out of the people that are being governed.
No, not at all. So, but like I said, it's just kind of mind-boggling that they could just do this. And, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure there's other people out there, but I'm very, a lot of, like my partner, he has kind of a checkered past. So if this had happened to him, it might be, a different story, especially with Chinese people. They don't want to mess with the U.S. government, right? They just would keep, if it was a Chinese person in my place, they wouldn't be doing a lawsuit. They would just move on and drive forward and restart and reboot. Yeah. But I'm a law-abiding citizen. I've never been in trouble with the law. I didn't have any warrants, yet here they are, just destroying my life and my family's life and our investors and everybody when they could readily access the information that they needed in regards to this, and they just decided to do their own thing. They wanted to be heroes.
I mean, I'm just thinking, hunting up here in Montana is a thing for sure, as it is in many Western states. And a lot of people use this app called Onyx that shows you property lines. Mm-hmm. And I guess my point in all of that is it's not that fucking hard to determine. I mean, there's a lag for sure when, property changes hands, and I get all of that. But I just feel like from a law enforcement perspective, like, you need to get your ducks in a row before you go and you do something like this, which is obviously, let's give them all the grace and say that they did think that it was an illegal grow on state property and that they were justified to do this. Like, before taking that action, though, wouldn't a reasonable person expect that they would do everything that they possibly could, especially presented with the information of the owner of the business saying, hey, and warning them, like, this is federal property. Like,
that's right.
I just feel like avoidable would be the term that I would fall back on.
Yes.
About
this. It was completely avoidable. There's only so much I can do. I thought that I did all that I could do. And, I don't know why they had to have a SWAT team and helicopters and hundreds of people there to destroy the farm. That might just be the normal operating procedure. Yeah, I guess. But, but even in this spectrum, right, we only had plants in 79 greenhouses, but you chose to destroy 279. So it's like, that's just, I can't even think of the word, but it's just excessive. Mm-hmm. It's like, there was no violation of anything going on in the other 200. Why did you destroy them? So,
what would you tell somebody who sees the? Actually, I'd even go broader than California with this question. They see the cannabis industry, and again, the states can vote. Do whatever. I'd be shocked if within the next 3 to 5 years it wouldn't be 3/4, if damn near almost every state flips it at some point to. Montana went the route, I believe, it was medicinal for a year, and then they switched to recreational.
All right.
I have no idea the parameters that are inside of that, even though I do understand there are a lot of them. It's just not my world, and it's not something I ever paid attention to. But from somebody in your position who looked at this as a business and tried to operate inside of that legal architecture, what advice would you have to somebody who is looking at it as a business as well and wants to do that?
I mean, I would... the people that are most successful in the Coachella Valley where I'm at, which is it's a big cannabis area. Mm-hmm. Mike Tyson, all those guys, they have places there. You have to have that connection with the local government, because even if you are following the rules, they'll find some way to stick it to you. And I've just found that in everything that I've done, from the recycling to the farming. And I know that the people, there's some former mayors that are probably the most successful, that own their own cannabis shops and are doing cultivation because they have connections and they can navigate that. And, if you're an outsider and you don't have any political experience, I would probably stay away from it,
Do you know if any portion of that sheriff's department's budget comes from what they seize?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I don't know if they sell the cannabis because they had the Burtec, which is the dump company, the trash collection company.
Okay, like the waste management company?
Yeah. They put the plants in there. So they disposed of the plants.
Yeah, I just wonder sometimes, I think I've heard.
Well, I should say they did. So they did seize cash from us.
That's where I was going. I believe some federal agencies, or it might be local. I'm a little bit over my skis here. But I have talked to people who have talked about like large seizures like that. A portion of what is seized goes back into it as budget.
So that's kind of the little hidden secret is 99.9% of the time, if it's illegal, illegal, whatever, when they seize cash, they keep it. And what I learned from the raid is if you have $10,000 or more in one specific area, they can seize it. If you have $5,000 in your pants pocket and then another 4 over there, they can't seize it.
Because it's under 10?
It's under 10. So it's only in groups or, I guess, hiding areas or whatever of 10,000 or more can they seize it. And
Michael, write that down.
And I have to say that this was a small victory for me in that they seized my cash. But this was not farm money. This was money I had taken out during COVID. And I had to file a lawsuit. The guys at Larson told me, because another guy used to be, the head guy used to be with the DA and the federal DA. And he said, listen, you need to file this paperwork or you'll never get your money back. So I filed the paperwork and I had to basically sue the county for my money, and they actually ended up giving it back to me. They gave me a check like shortly after my criminal case was done. They said, we have a check, you can come pick it up. And I went and picked up my check from the sheriff's department, and they gave me my money back, and they actually gave the tribe their money back as well. So they gave them because they had a lot more cash on hand than we did. But normally that never happens, because when I went down to file the paperwork at the courthouse, they had never seen the paperwork before. They're like, what is this? I'm like, well, I'm filing to get my money back that they seized. And they're like, hold on, let me go talk to my boss. And they came out with a bunch of other paperwork. I had to go get it filled out, turned it in. And basically I sued the district attorney's office because they were the ones that make the determination on whether or not you get your money back. And if you don't do it within 30 days, they keep it. They don't tell you that.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. They don't tell you that when they arrest you. But it's called civil forfeiture. And you got 30 days to file against them. But nobody ever does it because...
It's interesting that they take your literal cash and pay you back in a check.
Yes. I kept a picture of the check, though.
If you think about it, that could be a varsity move for money laundering.
Yes, because this
just let the sheriff's department do it for you.
This private investigator that I work with, he was with that division of the sheriff's office, the seizure. He's like, we never gave anything back. He goes, he was shocked that I got my money back.
Yeah.
So, and I was pleasantly surprised. So.
Well, I hope it works out in your favor. If it does, are you staying in California or are you ejecting?
No, I'm going to... the reason I'm in California is, my parents are getting older.
Yeah. And,
being in the military and doing this and working, downrange or whatever, you're never home. And last time I saw them, they were really moving a lot slower, let's just say.
Yeah.
And I just want to spend some time with them before, they're calling comes, let's just say. So for the last 3-4 years, it's been great. I moved in with them for that short period of time. Yeah. But now I get to see them on a regular basis. It's something I really value. And, once we exfil, once the bird comes, I'll take them with us. Just have to have the resources to be able to do that.
Where do you think you'll land?
So, we're looking at a couple places. Obviously, Florida, Texas. And then I came up here. I'm like, wow, this is pretty nice.
It's not anything like Florida or Texas.
But the other places I've been looking is overseas. I have a number of friends that are in the Philippines and in Thailand. They seem to love it. So, maybe sometime there. So I hear a lot of people leave here in the winter. So maybe that during the summer or during the winter. And then, of course, my wife, she wants to get a place in China. She's from Fuzhou.
I've actually been there.
Really?
I have been to Fuzhou.
So
spent about a week there.
Really?
I would describe it as a shithole.
A small Chinese city of 8 million people.
Yeah. You could see
all
several
feet
down the road.
Yeah.
I was there with a buddy of mine. I was working for CrossFit at the time, managing the Reebok relationship that they had, and Reebok made, I have no idea where they're making them now, the collaboration shoes with CrossFit in Fuzhou.
Okay.
I was with a buddy of mine. We were working out in a hotel, and there was a river near the hotel that had, I'm not even going to guess what was in it. Not going to guess. And there was a man swimming in it.
I believe it.
It was fucking next level.
Yes. Well, a lot of people don't realize this, but like where I was at in the UAE in Abu Dhabi and in Dubai, they're only about an hour apart. The Chinese, they have about 400 million people that work overseas, and they assign a Chinese boss to each major city. And in Abu Dhabi, for instance, they own an entire apartment high tower in downtown Abu Dhabi, and their job is to just bring in as many Chinese people as they can get work for, and then they live in this here. They work in all the hotels and all of that. So I had placed some French Foreign Legion guy with this QRF they have in out near Yemen, and he invited me to party, and I met my wife there. But that's where I learned about the Chinese bosses. They'll let you buy degrees or this or that, whatever you want to do to boost up your standing in the area that you're in. You can get it from the Chinese boss. Yeah. And all the workers from that area were from Fuzhou.
Have you ever been?
No, I haven't been yet.
Don't go. Maybe it's really changed since I've been.
Whenever they put a State Department warning out, I try and follow those. So, but
are there any issues that you've encountered having your military background, which I'm assuming came with the normal clearances that we get, and having a Chinese national wife?
No, nothing yet.
Okay,
but she's never been part of the party, so she's just.
She's telling you. Some Jason Bourne it'd be Janet Bourne shit going on there.
Well, when she was little, you have to pay to go to school in China. So she only went to like 6th or 7th grade, and then you have to pay beyond that. So they could only afford to send her brother to school. So when she was 12, she used to have to ride her bike to the RCA factory and make TVs. Fuck. So. And so she's had a pretty rough life. And
what does she think of the States?
She obviously, a lot of people like America. They see more opportunity here, and where we're at, it's easy for her because there's a lot of Chinese people. I was like during the raid, I was the only gringo. It was all Chinese people other than me. So she likes it, and then we go up to L.A. quite a bit. Huge, like Alhambra is 80% Chinese. So we have a lot of Chinese people that we're in contact with. So to include the people that we get the nutrients from and all the people that I've helped from the cannabis. There's a lot of Chinese people in cannabis. They either own a restaurant
I had
or
no
cannabis.
idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's if they're experts in that type of agriculture, that makes total sense.
Yeah. So they look at it, they invest their money, and that's the other thing. I felt bad for the farmers that got raided, so we basically gave them free rent this next go around so that they could recoup some of their money. But they're hard workers. They're focused. They'll work through a lot. They'll work through a lot of difficulties to get the job done. So,
how can people prevent law enforcement overreach, like what you're talking about? Is there any way? Or is it reactive in nature? You have to wait until something happens, and then it's the uphill battle through the legal system to try to get some level of recourse. Is there a proactive way to do it?
Well, I mean, obviously, I was proactive. And it didn't help.
But they have to, information has to be a two-way exchange.
It didn't help. If I could do it over again, this private investigator that I now know and have formed a friendship with, I would have used him to liaison with RSO, Riverside Sheriff's Office, to add more credibility and more information to what we were doing. So if I could do it over again, I would definitely do that. And that helps. Hiring former law enforcement, they know where all the mines are. This guy, he was also with internal affairs, so he knows where the bad cops are, what they do, how that looks, and he's been one of the biggest supporters as far as knowing that this is one hell of a case, and it's going to be a pretty big payday. So.
Well, I hope you were able to recover the losses that you incurred for sure. The states, if they want to go down the path of legalized whatever, and they are creating a runway for people to either take off or land on, and people are operating inside of those limits, it doesn't.
Yes.
To the best of my knowledge, I've never been a law enforcement officer, but your opinion on said law doesn't fucking matter. Your job is to enforce the law and not 1% farther than that.
Could not agree with you more. And then also just to use common sense. How many red flags do you need popping up in front of you before you take a step back and rethink the situation? It's like, anyway, you just can't do it. So I'm in hiding, and hopefully we'll get this thing going, and I'll report back to you on the outcome. But I think we have a really good case, and I wish it would have never came to this, and we're making money hand over fist at the farm, but just nothing ever works out the way you want when you're out on the frontier, right?
I guess. I don't know. You're exploring new territory for me. I don't know anything about this shit. What do you want to leave people with, man? We'll get you the hell out of here.
So first, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. And I know there are good law enforcement people that are out there that are working hard. In fact, I have a nephew that's with the Sheriff's Department up in Wisconsin, vet, 18 months straight in Iraq as artillerymen. And, there are good ones out there, but there's just as many bad ones out there that are looking to get promoted, just like we see in the military too. They're willing to step on other people or civilians and law-abiding citizens to get there, and it's just a fact of life. And it's just when you take risks, sometimes these things happen, and I'm operating in the gray. So, you got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
And I took the bad, and now I hope to get some good out of it. And again, if anyone's interested in the app, trainusup.com, you can check it out. And it's for sale. So thank you again for the time. And if you have any follow-up questions or anything.
I want to hear how it goes. You got to email me again through your definitely NSA monitored email to me.
Yes.
And let me know how it all resolves itself. Here's my bet is that the discovery process would be a bit much. I think you might. I was going to say I would hope, but I don't have any skin in this particular game. I think it may not see the inside of a courtroom.
I'm hoping, my
I got my
attorneys.
Juris Doctorate by watching Law and Order, though, for clarity.
Well, there you go. I mean, I do have two very talented former district attorneys where, they know how they try and hide stuff. And I have a high level of confidence in them. And, I'm excited to open this next chapter. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity because I really have been, beaten up and down and out for the last year since this happened.
Yeah.
And this is really just a big relief to be able to finally say something about it. And I appreciate you being a friend. And if you need anything, call me anytime.
I'm going to need, I don't need shit. Michael needs 6 kilos. Make sure it's addressed to Michael.
Yes.
No, man, it's my pleasure. Stay in touch and let me know how it goes.
I will. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of
and
course.
I wish you success at Black Rifle.
Yeah, we'll probably be all right. It's coffee.
I'm going back to buy some stuff, so I'm going to crank up your stock price right now.
I wish the coffee store was, in fact, attached to the stock price. It's not.
Oh, okay.